I have a deep love of Magic the Gathering. The characters that fill the world are diverse and weird and monstrous and go through journeys that can be shown through the mechanics of the game. It's a series of systems that tell a story. But what if there were no systems? Or a story? Just a character and a set of meaningless abilities. Could you find 99 cards that would go into a deck for a creature that is just nothing? How do you design your deck around a boring commander? I wanted to look into this when the Spider-Man set spoilers were released, showing off all the awesome new special commanders that use the new mechanics and themes in a way that excites the brain. But I'm also a degenerate, a meme goblin, and a loser. I saw the GOA time Morbius, the Living Vampire. Morbius the Living Vampire is a 4-drop, 3/1 legendary vampire scientist villain with the abilities Flying, Lifelink, and Vigilance. For a blue and a black mana, you can exile him from your graveyard to look at the top 3 cards of your library, take one, and put the rest to the bottom of your library. If you're a seasoned Magic player, you may have noticed a few issues with putting this card at the helm of my deck. The core issue is that it doesn't do anything unique, special, and isn't particularly powerful. In short, he's a brick. You can throw it through someone's window, but they won't be excited by it. I think there are 3 kinds of boring commanders. Vanilla, meaning they have no abilities. One and done, cards with a one-time effect. Or a brick, which is a card that doesn't do anything that meaningfully interacts with any other cards, like Morbius. Now, I still wanted to build Morbius as a commander so I could have a Morbin time deck where I morb all over my opponents. But what is a Morbius deck supposed to look like? How do you build a commander with no sauce? I started doing my research and I found 3 ways that a brick or a non-synergistic card can make a commander deck that is fun to play. This is what I call a phage deck. Building a commander deck is, in theory, pretty easy. Just put all the best, most expensive cards in a deck with the best commander and call it a day. Of course, as a commander connoisseur, I have a bit more class than that. To make a boring commander a good deck, you can just build a good deck. Let me explain. Morbius is a blue-black commander who is a flying attacker and blocker with lifelink, functioning like a clock for our opponents and guardrails for us. If Morbius dies, we can use him for a little top deck fixing and recast him or another good blocker later. Our commander has about the same function as a Baleful Strix, which does go in the deck. This whole deck is stuffed with good cards. I would consider this version of Morbin Time to be a bracket 3 or 4 commander deck. It certainly isn't C-EDH, and we aren't running Consultation and Thoracle, but it has all the best pieces we can get. Morbius functions less like a game piece and more like a color identity. The reason I call this deck style a phage deck is because the commander is really not something you care about. Many meme decks do this with 5-color commanders like Chromat or Corona, letting them use whatever card they want that's on theme and give no spotlight to the commander. To start building this deck, I went to EDH Rec, clicked on cards, 2-color, Demir, and started copy and pasting into my deck list. It wasn't like fun, but in the end of the process, I have a deck that does in fact use Morbius as a commander, just don't expect to see him. This style of deck building is fine. If you are using a true brick, it is totally a functional way to use whatever card at the head of your deck. But for me, it's deeply boring. Honestly, I would never play this deck just because it's a nothing sandwich. It's not Morbin Time. It's control 3 hours. So cool, Morb. But there's no soul in the deck. There is no love. If you love Morbius, you want to make a good deck, and get to say the phrase Morbin Time every combat step, let's get in the mech. A Voltron deck is a deck surrounding one creature that you make huge. You load them up with buffs and equipment and auras until they can snipe an opponent. There are lots of good auras in every color, equipment can be colorless, and pumps can come from anywhere. For Morbius, we have a few Voltron-y parts going for us. Some pieces to look for in a Voltron-style deck are evasion, protection, pump, and defense, or EPPD. Evasion is the ability to deal damage to players without being blocked. Think horsemanship. Protection prevents your commanders from being blown up or removed. Think hexproof and counterspells. Pump is ways to make your creatures more powerful. Bigger numbers, better keywords, powerful on-hit effects. And defense is just making sure you don't die on the crackback, so having blockers and gaining life. Morbius has ED. I'm going to rephrase that. Morbius is evasive with flying, and vigilance is a great defense keyword because your big creature can attack and block. We just have to fill the deck with PP. protection and pump, and find ways to assemble the mech. For protection, equipment like Swiftfoot boots and counterspells are fantastic. We can also use spells like Fake Your Own Death or Not Dead After All to survive a time when Morbius is certain to die. When it comes to pumps, the swords of X and Y are obviously extremely powerful, but by being a vampire and a villain, Morbius can get boosted by other creatures and reap the reward that vamps have gotten from having like 9 sets. For this, we're looking at Dr. Octopus and Blade of the Blood Chiefs. From there, we can leverage our strengths. Our commander gives us a little life. By having lifelink, we can run life gain synergies that don't actually attract attention nearly as much as dealing damage and having a high life total. We want subtle information, hand size, creature power, fetching. We can run Excalibur 2 for charge counters that can survive Morb getting morbed himself. Nazar the Velvet Fang is a fun way to draw some cards and cycle out some feeding counters. My favorite politics life gain piece is actually Wall of Limbs, a defender that can send out some nutty damage. We also have a lower toughness than our power, so it would be useful to have first or double strike. I love Ace's baseball bat, and Fire Shrieker is such a classic. And every deck needs a good finisher. Super Morb, or Vorpal Sword. So that's our Morbius mech. All the pieces for a deck that is pretty simple, but has you putting together lots of different cards to get to the same result. Morb. It can be a fun deck to play, but when it comes to building, it can be a bit generic. Any card can get Voltroned. Some are better than others inherently, but in general, they can all be elevated. But I wasn't satisfied with this, so I moved into phase 3 of building with a meh commander. The sauce. The theme. This is the meme. Morbing isn't just a deck, it's a way of life. If you really want to build a deck that is all about Morb, it has to embody what Morb cares about, which is morbing. There are 5 cards that can go into a Dimir deck that contain the word Morb, all of which are in the deck. We also have to include our sister-in-arms Madam Web, which means we should add at least one other spider. The best black spider card that was released with Spider-Man was Gwenom, an extremely powerful beater that can cheat out lots of spells. So we're going to add Symbiote Spider-Man. It does a little something in the grave, but is generally funnier than Gwenom. Morb also needs some Morb stuff, that is to say vampire stuff. We want to add good cards like New Blood, weird cards like Blood Tribute, and a bad card like Urge to Feed. I had to rewatch Morbius so I could figure out what this deck should actually look like. The movie didn't have enough substance to help me add anything other than adding all the cards about being thirsty. The way that I build my sillier commander decks is finding a card that I want to add for flavor reasons, then finding cards that function with it. Kind of like a mini commander for every few cards. Unquenchable Thirst encourages me to run deserts, which then encourages me to run Scavenger Grounds and Lazotep Quarry. Because of the amount of bats that would make their way into the deck, I threw in some generally good bats. Aclazotz and Darkstar Augur. I also put in weird bat synergies I had never heard of, Skeletal Vampire and Moonstone Eulogist. That's it. The true Morb deck. Bats and fangs and MDFCs because I can't help myself. It's at least my truth. It's not winning any championships, but it's mine and it's beautiful. So if there's a card that you want at the head of your commander deck, just remember that it doesn't have to be a good deck for it to be a great deck.